Hey guys, Chester Westford here. So, Netflix's Wednesday came out last week, and this was one of my most anticipated shows of 2022. The combination of the Addams Family property and Tim Burton was something that really intrigued me and something that I was kind of surprised hadn't happened sooner. Most people have already reviewed this probably, but I decided to wait a while as I don't like to binge watch shows, so I wanted to spread it out a little. You know, for one thing, I feel like they're more enjoyable when viewed little by little rather than all at once. All at once and it's done too quickly. Little by little, you can drag the enjoyment out, and in shows with particularly good characters, you can spend a little more time with those characters. And this was one of those shows where I would say that I did particularly enjoy a lot of the characters. Particularly Wednesday and her roommate Enid. Those two actresses and their chemistry was one of the things that really made the show for me. All the actors were good, but those two I thought were particularly standout, them and Thing. Thing was fabulous in this series. They really fleshed out his character in some really charming and humorous ways. I was a bit worried since they were turning this into a mystery kind of drama about a teen Wednesday that they were going to ruin it, give her a ton of angst and teenage romance like some shows. I guess I was worried it would turn into like Riverdale or something. You know, I suppose they're okay for a certain audience, but I'm not really into that sort of thing. And while this did have some elements of, you know, romance and drama and stuff, I felt like it was handled very well. And instead of most of it happening to her, it kind of happened around her, which is kind of what I was hoping for. Kind of like, you know, she's a fish out of water and not completely understanding or getting the emotions of some of the drama around her and the boys who have crushes on her. Of course, she does have some character development herself and some kind of coming of age problems, but nothing that I feel didn't fit her character. In fact, I thought it all fit her character very well. Of course, we all know Wednesday is a sarcastic, introverted, slightly sadistic outcast, which this show leans very, very heavily into, and as much as that is entertaining in an ensemble cast, it could have gotten old and been kind of one note, but it wasn't. Partly because of the brilliant performance from Jenna Ortega, but also because they gave her some character development which felt real and kind of relatable and humanized her a bit more, but not too much. She's still very much Wednesday at the end of this. She believes and acts like she doesn't care about other people or what they think of her, but we find out a little bit as the show goes on that that's not totally true. Especially with her family, when Thing almost dies, it's the one time she tears up in the show. The only time she smiles is when Uncle Fester shows up. She's shown to care about Pugsley. I mean, the whole reason this show happens is kind of because she gets revenge on the bullies who beat him up and left him in the locker. But yeah, by the end though, it's not just her family she cares about. That hug with Enid especially shows that she's learned to, deep down at least, somewhat care about the friends she's made at school. But even with all that, like I say, she's still Wednesday. She doesn't go too far with showing it, and she's still very distant at the end when she says goodbye to everyone. I think if they had just flipped the switch and suddenly she's friendly and loves everybody, that wouldn't have been true to the character and would have ruined the character and would have been kind of boring. But yeah, I thought they handled her very well, and like I say, Jenna Ortega was perfect casting. The whole casting of this is great. As I said at the top of the video, my other favorite character besides Thing in this is probably Enid, played by Emma Myers. Another perfect casting and just such a well-written character. Yeah, she's the cheery opposite of Wednesday, and that could be in danger of being a stereotype, but she doesn't feel as much like a stereotype as she could have. Again, because she feels like a very well-written and well-rounded character, and maybe she doesn't have as much development as the lead, but there is still some. And I really hope if we get a season 2 that we do get to see more of her. I'm sure we'll see more of all of them, but her and the rest of the Addams family are the ones I'm most excited about. Speaking of which, I know some of the casting of her family was controversial, particularly with Luis Guzman as Gomez, but I think he's great. I think he does well in the role. He does, as some point out, look a little more accurate to the original comics than Sean Astin or Raul Julia did. But yeah, I thought they were all cast well. They're not in it much. Fred Armisen as Uncle Fester is something that I would have never thought of. And when I first heard, oh, it's Fred Armisen, I was like, really? That guy? But yeah, he did great. He was great in the role. I really liked his Uncle Fester. I liked that he leaned a little more into the Jackie Coogan Uncle Fester instead of the Christopher Lloyd Uncle Fester. I mean, he was definitely his own Fester, but I don't know. I kind of prefer Jackie Coogan over Christopher Lloyd. Christopher Lloyd, I don't dislike his Fester, but he's a little bit too weird for me. I like this version of Fester more. But yeah, the rest of the cast was great. I do want to mention Christina Ricci. It's cool they got her in there, and as soon as I heard she was going to be in it and it was a murder mystery, I don't know. I had this feeling she was going to turn out to be the villain, and it turns out I was right. I also predicted quite early on that Tyler was going to be the monster, but I still thought it was a pretty decent twist. The whole show with the murder mystery and all just feels like a concept that really shouldn't work. Taking a comedy property and turning it into like a comedy drama. It didn't work when they tried it with the Munsters. Mockingbird Lane was terrible, but this works really well. The writing of Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, they were able to craft a well-written story that, although somewhat predictable at times, kept me intrigued enough that I couldn't wait until the next episode to see what happens. And like I say, the characters were just so well written. And I think one other thing that ties it all together that really made this work is, who could have directed it better than Tim Burton? His ability to tell quirky supernatural stories like these with outcasts and all is pretty much unmatched in my opinion. And the look and style of his projects just matches the Addams Family perfectly. I really hope we get a season 2, and I really, really, really hope Tim Burton comes back to direct it, because I just don't feel like it would be the same without him. But I also worry he might not, given the fact that I think he's said in the past he's gone on record as saying he doesn't like doing sequels, and he might consider season 2 a sequel. But, you know, maybe he's mellowed and changed his mind since then, and maybe he will come back for another one. I really hope so. I really want to see more of all these characters. I want to find out who the stalker is. I want to find out what happened with Tyler. He's, transforming at the end like he might break out of the van. I really like this show. It wasn't perfect. I do have a few gripes. I was never a big fan of the whole piranha thing, even when the trailer came out. That's just a bit much for me. And I feel like with a show like The Addams Family and Wednesday, it's funnier and more humorous if we don't see what happened. Like, sometimes in things like that, like, they'll reference... how do I put it? They'll, reference something that happened, but not tell you exactly what happened. And it's funnier in your imagination than it could ever be if it's shown. I kind of wish it had been something like that, where, it was, I just think something like if they were in the principal's office and the principal just says something like, "What you did was inexcusable. Where did you even get piranhas?" I think that would have been funnier than seeing it, and just more interesting to me. But, I guess that's a minor gripe. That's really the only major gripe I have with the series. I'm glad that they didn't give her a big romance. The only romance they really did give her was the guy who turned out to be the monster, and I thought that kind of worked. I thought the whole story worked. It was interesting stuff with her ancestor, and a good amount of creepiness, kookiness, comedy, drama, and just all around a very well-made show. This might be my favorite Netflix original. Although A Series of Unfortunate Events is really, really good too. Maybe a toss-up. With Wednesday in the lead a little more. I mean, Stranger Things is good too, but in my opinion, Wednesday is way better than that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go hide from all the Stranger Things fans coming at me with spiked baseball bats and an army of Demogorgons. But now I hand it over to you guys. I'd love to hear what you all thought of this adventure. Did you watch it and enjoy it? Or were you not so pleased with the direction the show